I was planning a surprise anniversary party while my husband was secretly plotting to steal half my company. What he didn't realize was that I saw it all coming. So I let him think he'd already won. The irony is I was planning a surprise anniversary party. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of building a life I thought was honest, supportive, and, above all, real. I had arranged a private chef and a string quartet and even convinced his mother to fly in from Phoenix, which is a diplomatic miracle in itself. I thought I was giving him something special. Meanwhile, Ryan was planning something too, a betrayal so elaborate it made Shakespeare look like a sitcom writer. Let me rewind. I'm Victoria Jensen. I'm 36, a cybersecurity entrepreneur with a net worth north of $500 million. Not inherited. Built? Scratched from the walls of rejection, male-dominated boardrooms, ramen-fueled nights, and more miss-then-hit startup pitches than I can count. My company, Secure Nova, didn't just disrupt the industry. It redefined it. Ryan and I met during the Upswing, a charity gala with way too many people drinking cocktails they couldn't pronounce. He was charming, down-to-earth, and unlike the parade of tech bros I usually had to wade through. He actually listened. Or so I thought. 6 months later, he proposed during a helicopter tour of New York City. That should have been my first red flag. Grand gestures were his specialty. Subtlety? Not so much. I mistook drama for romance. Stupid. The first 5 years were, I admit, pretty blissful. His legal expertise complemented my technical mind. We had chemistry, momentum, and ambition. We built a sleek Connecticut house with solar panels, an infinity pool, and an espresso machine smarter than most Ivy League grads. But over time, I noticed things. Little things. The way he tracked Secure Nova's stock price like it was a fantasy football team. How he always knew which assets were under my name. His sudden fascination with offshore investments. When I brought it up, he laughed it off. Just professional curiosity, babe. Comes with the job. I wanted to believe that. But the gut knows. And my gut started to clench. Still, I tried. I suggested couples therapy. Planned impromptu getaways. Checked my behavior. Was I distant? Too work-focused? Did I forget to appreciate him? He told me I was overthinking. That the Williams case, his high-profile divorce client, was just wearing him down. He needed space, rest, and understanding. And I gave it. Like a fool. Which brings us to the day that changed everything. Ryan was off in Chicago. Another business trip, though now I know it was a romantic getaway with his assistant-turned-mistress, Rachel. I was home alone, prepping files for the anniversary bash. Our shared desktop was on and the screen had gone idle, just slowly cycling through a screensaver slideshow of our wedding in Lake Como. The first betrayal? He forgot to log out. His email account was right there. Open. I hesitated. Ryan and I had always respected privacy. But a subject line stopped me cold. Offshore Asset Search Jensen Holdings. That's my company. My hands turned ice. I clicked. The email was from a private investigator in the Cayman Islands, a name I recognized from Tech Expos, a guy who specialized in tracing shell corporations and hidden holdings. Progress report attached. Monitoring transfers from primary accounts. Singapore access pending. I opened the attachment. It was my financial DNA laid bare. Every account. Every subsidiary. IP valuations. Notes about vulnerabilities in my company structure. Even documents I kept off any digital record. Stuff I only ever discussed verbally. I was shaking. My husband had hired a team to dig through my empire like it was a scavenger hunt. Then I found the emails with Rachel. He still suspects nothing, he wrote. Can't wait to see her face when she realizes she funded our future, Rachel replied. Future? What future? Oh, you mean the beachfront property in Maui you two lovebirds were planning to buy with my money? I went numb. Then I found the draft divorce petition. Saved to our shared desktop. Because of course. Created 3 months ago. To be filed 1 week after our anniversary. Included in it? A claim to half of Secure Nova, citing his substantial contribution to its growth. The man never so much as replied to a client email on my behalf, but he wanted half. I sat there for hours, reading, rereading, and ingesting the cold calculation. He was never planning to surprise me with a necklace or a weekend in Napa. He was planning to steal my life. By morning, I wasn't mourning anymore. I was sharpening knives. Not literally, but emotionally and intellectually. I was already calculating angles. I've dealt with breaches before. Just never one that shared my bed. I picked up the phone and called Marcus, childhood friend, CFO of Secure Nova. Financial genius with a steel trap memory and zero tolerance for bulls ***. Most importantly, loyal. We need to talk. Not at the office. We met at a tiny cafe in New Haven that smelled like espresso and fresh betrayal. I laid out everything. Every email, every search, every whisper of Rachel. His face went gray. Jesus, Vic? I always thought he was a little too smooth. But this is war. Exactly. I told him we needed to lock things down. Quietly. No drama. No panic. Just action. He leaned in. He's already been asking about your Swiss accounts. Through backdoor financial channels. 3 months ago. I thought you knew. Eyes. Veins. Also, Marcus continued, we noticed odd IP access on your secure Nova email. Traced back to your home Wi-Fi. We replaced your laptop last month, claimed it was a system-wide upgrade. You think he installed spyware? I think he did more than that. I think your whole house is bugged. Of course. He had access to everything. Passive access. Emotional access. And now? Digital. I took a breath and said, then we feed him what he wants. That afternoon, Marcus and I locked ourselves in a rented conference room in Manhattan. Within hours, we had a war room. Patricia Winters, my divorce attorney, one Ryan once called aggressive to a fault. James Chin, my financial strategist. And Eliza Montgomery, the best forensic specialist Secure Nova had ever trained. The Avengers, but angrier. Patricia laid it out, Connecticut's an equitable distribution state. If we prove that your assets remain separate and unmingled, we can defend them. But we need receipts. All of them. Done, I said. James started sorting holdings. The Delaware IP trust predated your marriage. The Singapore expansion has legitimate business justification. We just need to accelerate timelines. And Secure Nova? I asked. Clean. He's not on any board. No shares. No votes. Just pillow talk. Eliza chimed in, your devices were infected. Very sophisticated. He was capturing keystrokes and screen data. Your house? Almost certainly bugged. Can you remove it? She smiled. Better. I can manipulate it. Boom. That became our plan. We'd feed Ryan exactly what he wanted, just not the truth. Meanwhile, we'd move in silence. In the span of 24 hours, we set a 7-day counter-strategy in motion. Singapore expansion, corporate restructuring, airtight documentation, and a firewall of legal justifications. All perfectly legitimate. All previously planned. We were just expediting. The woman sobbing on the bathroom floor? Gone. I was back. And I had receipts. Day 1. Ryan's plane had just taken off. My private investigator confirmed it. A business trip to Chicago that was actually a romantic getaway to the Cayman Islands. He and Rachel playing house in paradise while he prepared to legally rob me blind. Fine. Let him tan. I was about to set fire to every last inch of his plan. The first strike? Singapore. Secure Nova had been eyeing expansion into the Asia-Pacific market for over 6 months. Ryan knew that. He thought he could spin it as a sudden asset shift. But it was already in motion now, we just moved it into overdrive. I called an emergency board meeting, citing a fabricated competitive threat that required immediate action. My board trusted me. When you've built a multi-billion-dollar company from scratch, people tend to listen when you say jump. By noon, we had documentation underway. By sunset, we had transferred $75 million in corporate assets, fully legal, fully traceable, and completely out of Ryan's reach. The expansion wasn't a dodge. It was just timed perfectly. Every move was done through proper legal channels. If he ever tried to argue this in court, he'd be met with board minutes, market analysis reports, and predated plans showing this wasn't divorce planning, it was strategic growth. And it would hold. That night, I sat in the home office, speaking into a bugged phone line about cake tastings, anniversary playlists, and spa bookings. Let him think I was still playing wife. But on my secure burner laptop, I coordinated Singapore legal teams, encrypted communications, and strategic redirections that made my company ironclad. Day 2. Intellectual Property Day. Secure Nova's true value wasn't just the money, it was the code. Our proprietary security protocols, encryption tools, and network defense systems were our crown jewels. If Ryan got even a whiff of ownership in those assets, I'd never sleep again. James, my financial guy, brought in our patent attorneys. We refreshed every document, every licensing agreement, and every ownership certificate. Everything pointed back to the Delaware holding company I'd set up before I ever even met Ryan. No movement. Just documentation, Patricia reminded me. We're not hiding assets. We're proving what's always been true. And that's what we did. Meanwhile, Ryan texted me from his luxury suite in the Caymans. Hope your week's not too stressful. Can't wait to surprise you. Winky face. Oh, I bet you couldn't. I replied with a heart emoji and a fake update about finalizing our anniversary playlist. Then I let Eliza slip a decoy version of my company's internal documents into the surveillance stream, just enough to make him feel confident. Day 3. The emotional toll hit. Not everything could be handled with board meetings and encryption protocols. I was physically exhausted. 3 hours of sleep a night. Eating crackers for dinner. Avoiding mirrors. I kept thinking about the Ryan I fell in love with, the guy who took me stargazing on the roof of our house, who cried when we adopted our dog, who once stayed up all night learning Python just to understand one of my TED Talks. Was any of that real? I wanted to scream. But instead, I updated our joint calendar with a fake spa appointment and logged back into my burner to finalize offshore real estate transfers legally owned by premarital trusts. I wasn't just fighting for my fortune. I was fighting to prove I hadn't been stupid. That love hadn't made me blind, just too trusting. Day 4. Real estate. Aspen. Martha's Vineyard. Hawaii. All were purchased with my premarital funds. All improved with money from my separate accounts. All on Ryan's fantasy hit list. Patricia was clear, he'll claim the appreciation is marital. You need to prove the appreciation came from separate contributions. So we went forensic. Every dollar was traced. Every renovation invoice was dug up. Even the damn throw pillows had receipts. The deeper we went, the more I realized how little Ryan actually knew about what he was trying to steal. He had plans. But I had paperwork. Day 5. Trusts and timing. Ryan had no idea how deep this iceberg went. Before we were even engaged, I had established several trusts for tax purposes, completely separate, fully legal, and airtight. I had used some of those funds to help my parents retire early, to buy my first apartment, and yes, to build the original prototype of Secure Nova. They were the financial seed from which my entire life grew. Now those same trusts were my insurance policy. I met with the original estate attorney who drafted them, a silver-haired woman named Beatrice who wore glasses on a chain and could destroy a greedy heir with a smile. We combed through every clause, every timestamp, every distribution rule. She grinned like a war general when we were done. Nothing here he can touch, even if he tries. That night, Eliza confirmed Rachel had been shopping for beachwear and champagne in the Caymans. The irony of it, celebrating with my money before the heist was even complete. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold. They thought they were living in a Hallmark movie. I was writing a legal thriller. Day 6. The hardest one. Sentiment. This wasn't about documents or strategy. This was about touchstones, family heirlooms, wedding mementos, the little pieces of my life that couldn't be itemized on a spreadsheet but mattered more than anything. I cataloged every personal asset that belonged to me before the marriage. My grandmother's emerald brooch. The first edition books from my college mentor. Letters my mother wrote me in high school. Ryan had never cared about these things. But now, if I left them in the house, they'd become bargaining chips. Emotional leverage. So I moved them to a secure location just in case. Not hidden. Just protected. And in the bottom of my keepsake drawer, I found something I hadn't touched in years. A bundle of love letters. From Ryan. Back when we were still new, still naive. I read one. Then another. I tried to match the man who wrote them with the man who was now plotting a heist in linen shorts and SPF 50. I couldn't. So I put them in a sealed envelope labeled Evidence of Intent. Because sometimes the things you write when you're in love are more honest than a dozen court depositions. Day 7. The final act. We gathered in a secure conference room, my Avengers once more assembled. Marcus, Patricia, James, Eliza. The documentation was finalized. Every move we made was covered by business necessity, dated records, and legal precedent. We hadn't hidden anything. We had just clarified reality. By dusk, the paperwork was bound, encrypted, and notarized. The trap was complete. Ryan would return the next morning, suntanned, smug, and completely unaware that every dollar he'd planned to steal had slipped through his fingers. I stood in our bedroom that night and looked around. It felt like a movie set now. Staged. Hollow. I lay down in the bed we once shared and felt nothing. No grief. No nostalgia. Only steel. He thought I'd crumble. Let him try. Ryan came home on a Tuesday. He walked through the door with sun-kissed skin and that fake lawyer smile he reserved for clients and cocktail parties. He handed me a bottle of perfume in a glossy bag from the duty-free shop, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Missed you, babe." I matched his lie with one of my own. Missed you, too. He poured us wine that night and talked about Chicago, meetings that never happened, cases that didn't exist, entirely fictional clients. I let him spin his web while I sat across the kitchen island, nodding like the perfect, oblivious wife. He had no idea I'd torn down every thread of his plan. The next day, he announced his surprise. A second honeymoon, he said. Maldives. Private villa. North Island. Complete seclusion. I almost laughed. The exact location was mentioned in his emails with Rachel. That was where he planned to drop the divorce bomb, romantic isolation, as a soft cushion for a legal nuke. I squealed like a fool. You're amazing. Inside, I was already preparing the press statement. For 3 days, we danced our little charade. I picked outfits I'd never wear. Searched for excursions I'd never take. Ryan took phone calls on the patio in hushed tones, likely confirming with his lawyers that the trap was about to close. Thursday night, he booked us a table at my favorite restaurant. It was our pre-anniversary dinner. I wore red. At 5:17 p.m., my private investigator texted me, he's heading to the courthouse. Filing confirmed. At 5:24 p.m., Ryan stepped onto the terrace with his phone to his ear, returned with a faux frown, and said, "Baby, I'm so sorry. The Williams case exploded. I have to go into the office. It's urgent." I blinked. Can't someone else handle it? I wish. He kissed my forehead. Tomorrow night, I promise. Then he left, not to the office, but to file paperwork that would attempt to claim half of everything I had ever built. I sat alone at the dinner table in full makeup and heels, staring at a bottle of wine I no longer had the stomach for. The courier came the next morning. Legal documents. Divorce petition. His signature was neat. His demands were precise. 50% of all marital assets. Half of Secure Nova. claims of emotional support and marital contribution. I made sure the security cameras in our foyer caught every second of my shocked reaction as I opened the envelope. Let the record show I performed my life. He returned that evening like a man walking into a courtroom he thought he already owned. I think we should be civil, he said, setting his briefcase down with a smooth, practiced calm. My attorneys have a preliminary proposal ready. He handed me a packet across the marble coffee table. As I flipped through the pages, I bit my lip to keep from smiling. He thought this was checkmate. I was about to flip the entire board. Ryan cracked by Wednesday. Not with a bang, with an unraveling. It started with his morning coffee. The usual arrogance in his step faltered when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. Then, pretending to scroll casually, he stepped into the other room. He was on the phone for nearly an hour. When he came back, he said nothing. But the sweat on his collar said plenty. He tried to keep up appearances over dinner, but by Thursday his mask had slipped. He was agitated. Snappy. Took 3 calls in a row that ended with slamming his fist into the desk. I overheard one. What do you mean the Singapore holding is premarital? That doesn't make sense. The valuation was done during the marriage. Yes, Ryan. And the holding company that owned that asset? Founded for years before I met you. Oops. That night he asked me a question, casual but with desperation behind it. What's Secure Nova Singapore? Our Asia-Pacific headquarters, I answered smoothly. The board approved it 6 months ago. Remember? We talked about it over sushi. You nodded. He didn't nod now. He blinked. Swallowed. Walked out of the room. By Friday, the legal teams had started calling. Patricia, my attorney, met with his team for an emergency conference. She brought color-coded binders, detailed timelines, and about 3 dozen notarized affidavits. Ryan's team brought panic. The assets they expected to grab were behind glass. The financial accounts had provenance. The trusts were locked. The IP was protected. The expansion was legitimate. They were drowning. At dinner that night, he suddenly turned sweet. I've been thinking, maybe we rush this. Divorce is messy. Maybe we should try therapy before making big decisions. I took a sip of wine. Therapy? Before or after filing? I was confused. I didn't think. No, I interrupted gently. You thought too much. For months. He didn't respond. By Monday, he was desperate. He showed up unannounced at my office, full meltdown in the reception area, demanding to see me. Security escorted him out. The illusion had shattered. The charming lawyer husband had morphed into a man unraveling publicly, professionally, and personally. He hadn't just lost control of the narrative. He'd never controlled it to begin with. The final blow came wrapped in a navy blue suit and humiliation. Ryan's law partners called an emergency meeting. They had reviewed the surveillance photos, the emails, the spyware logs, the private investigators' receipts. His signature on a divorce petition was drafted while he was actively monitoring my financial devices. They were furious. His behavior wasn't just unethical. It was reckless, malicious, stupid. By Tuesday, they asked him to step down. Not just from the case, from the firm. His reputation as a discreet, strategic divorce attorney was shredded. 3 clients pulled their cases on the same day. Rachel left 2 days later. According to a mutual acquaintance, her words were, "I'm not going to live in some rental while you figure your life out." Maui? Cancelled. The beachfront fantasy evaporated with the last shreds of his credibility. But the final curtain didn't fall until he showed up at Secure Nova's headquarters one last time. Security stopped him at the front desk, of course, but I agreed to meet him in the lobby. He looked broken, paler, thinner. The polish was gone. The arrogance stripped. "I just want to talk," he said quietly. "Talk?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like the kind of talk where you fake a second honeymoon and serve legal papers before dessert?" He winced. "I made mistakes." I nodded slowly. "Yes. You mistook me for someone you could outplay." He swallowed. "There were times it was real. You know that, right?" "Maybe. But I'll never know for sure. And that's your fault." He didn't argue. The next time I saw him, we were finalizing the settlement. Secure Nova remained untouched. Every asset I had protected stayed mine. He got the lake house and some joint investments, a fair outcome, but a fraction of what he tried to steal. 6 months later, I stood in my penthouse overlooking Central Park. Secure Nova's IPO was days away. The valuation? $4 billion. I thought about the journey. From sobbing on the bathroom floor to becoming untouchable. From heartbreak to legend. Ryan had tried to rob me blind. Instead, I showed him and every woman watching exactly what happens when you underestimate someone who built herself from nothing. You don't just lose. You get erased. She built a billion-dollar empire and nearly lost it to the man who swore to love her. But in the end, Victoria didn't just survive, she dominated. Her story is a masterclass in strategy, self-preservation, and the brutal cost of underestimating a woman with everything to lose and the brilliance to protect it all. But here's the real question. If you discovered your spouse was plotting to rob you blind, would you confront them, or would you outplay them in silence? Let us know in the comments. And if you're still breathing after this wild ride, hit like, subscribe, and buckle up for more stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.